Hello everybody, this is Sir Jet and welcome to another episode of The Contemporary World. Today our lesson is the drivers of globalization. Drivers are the forces or the factors that cause globalization. And it's just like the screwdriver. What drives the screw? The screwdriver. Globalization advances. What causes the advances of globalization? These are called the drivers of globalization. And there are many. So that's what we will discuss today. Okay, let's get started. The drivers of globalization. Okay, so based on our past lectures, let's look back and identify the drivers of globalization. Do you still remember our previous lessons? I'll give you a minute. Think about them. Review them. We talked about political globalization, how political ideas and philosophies spread around the world. What caused them to happen? Who caused them to happen? We talked about economic globalization, how economic systems became popular or adopted all over the world. What caused them to happen? We also talked about cultural globalization, how Western culture is invading the world. And we also talked about social globalization, how the different modes of socialization has been transforming the global landscape. And we also talked about the globalization of other things. All in all, it's time now to look back and summarize all these kinds of globalizations. We define globalization as the breaking down of barriers, the world becoming smaller, becoming one. So what are the things that cause them to be like so? Number one is science and technology. Because of some scientific discoveries, okay, and innovations, the world has changed or has globalized. The first one would be the discovery of agriculture. It has transitioned the world from a hunting and gathering society into an agricultural society. People started to live in cities, okay, and because of the discovery of agriculture. Next would be the Industrial Revolution, when people discovered machines, okay, developed machines, and discovered the use of fossil fuels. It really changed the global landscape and has caused the world to have a world order of the farm-factory relationship of nations. Okay? And then people started to develop machines for mass production, and so products became so abundant and easily distributed all over the world. And so the transition now is from the agricultural system to an industrial society. Okay, another thing, an example of a scientific discovery that has caused globalization is the discovery that the world is round. Before, people thought that the world was flat, but with the discovery that the world is round, it caused galleons to travel far and wide, discover new lands, conquer the continents, and it made people aware that there are continents and people that they can subdue. Okay, and more recently, the discovery of fossil fuels like coal and petroleum has also caused globalization. It led to the boosting of the Industrial Revolution. Okay? The mass production and transportation became so fast and massive with the discovery of the fossil fuels. And then the invention of mass transportation or advanced transportation made travel faster and more convenient. The choo-choo train, the airplane, even spacecrafts. And from outer space, you can see that the world is really a small world after all. So in this past century, more and more people has traveled compared to the number of people and trips that happened in the past 2,000 or 3,000 years. Can you imagine that? So the world has really globalized because of the discovery of and the development of these modes of transportation. Okay, space travel also. From the moon or from outer space, you can see that the Earth is really a small world after all. Okay? Mass communication is also under science and technology. The discovery of the printing press, radio, telegram, television technology, all enabled people to send messages globally. Okay? And not only to individuals, but to mass audiences. And this is globalization. Now, in our time, we go as a level higher, and what we have is information technology. Our computers, the internet, has really made the world really a small world. See, you can call, you can see people from the other side of the planet, transact business with a click of a finger on the computer. The world has really no more barriers in this age and time. Okay, the number 2 driver of globalization is trade. Okay, the honest to goodness trading. No colonialism involved yet. Just people bartering. Hey, you have a product, I have a product, let's exchange. And we travel far and wide to find our trade partners. That is the honest to goodness trade I'm talking about. The time of the merchants, when they brought goods from one continent to another, causing the awareness of the existence of other lands and other cultures. And then they tell stories to their homeland about the places they visited, and they have evidences, the products that they carry along. And that made the people of their communities realize that there's another set of civilization or city or kingdom on the other side of the mountain or the continent. And so trading has caused globalization in some way. Examples of such trade is the spice trade. Okay, now this is now the time of colonization. Later on, trade now involved colonization. And just the same, the spice trade became a catalyst for the age of discovery and the age of colonization. People started to get interested in getting more of the products from another kingdom or another land, to the point that they colonized those places. And now, in the modern times, foreign products flood the local markets of several countries, just like what we have studied in the age of cooperation. And we see a lot of Chinese products flooding our market. And this is globalization. See, trade is indeed a driver of globalization. Number 3 driver of globalization is colonization, and its modern version called Neo-Colonization. Because of countries and kingdoms and empires conquering another kingdom, they imposed their political, economic, cultural, and social systems into that colony. Like the Spaniards really imposed their system and their lifestyle on us Filipinos. And so there is a spreading of a system, and that is globalization. The British did the same to their colonies, And so we have some flavor of British culture and British system in India, in Australia, and elsewhere that they had their colonies, and that is globalization. Okay, the Spaniards spreading Catholicism, and so we see probably half of the world practicing this religion, especially in Central and South America and in the Philippines. And the British spreading their language, and now English is the international business language, and probably a lot of people are speaking it, probably the most widespread language in the world. Okay? And then the Americans spreading the Amway, okay, or American pop culture, Hollywood movies, what is cool, what is not cool, according to the perspective of American movie icons or rock stars. You see, and the world accepts the Amway, and that is globalization. Okay, that is the neo-colonization doing globalization. Okay, number 4 driver of globalization is migration, the transfer of people from one place to another to settle permanently into another place. Okay, we call that migration. When people move, they bring along their ideas, they bring along their culture, they bring along their gadgets, their technology, their food, their cuisine, and in the new place that they settle, they are actually doing globalization because they are leaving footprints, okay, or fingerprints of their culture into the new place they are settling in. The transatlantic slave trade brought the African people as slaves into North and South America, and with these African slaves, they brought their culture into the Americas. So you see, the African American cultural aspects, like the rap, okay, their music, like rap music, or even the blues, they are originally of African tribal origin. Okay, and they were brought to the American continents because of the slave trade. And so we have a facet of globalization in that story. Okay, the transatlantic slave trade. The Jews were also a wandering people. They are widespread or all over the world. The Jewish diaspora, right, or the Jewish dispersion, caused the Jews to have businesses and Jewish communities in Europe, in America, in Africa, all over. And so migration is another driver of globalization. Okay? Number 5 driver of globalization, wars and revolutions. These violent events caused people to migrate, and this caused political systems to be overthrown and to take on a new format, and that is globalization. The idea that the new government, the victor of the war, would implement, okay, is globalization, because it will transform the nation, it will transform the place, the people, the society, to accept a new system coming from an outside source. Okay, wars cause borders to fall. Okay, people to migrate and new systems to be imposed. When a country invades another country, the borderline between them is erased, and a new system may happen. Okay? Like the French Revolution ushered democracy not only in France but also in modern Europe. Okay? The Russian Revolution put communism in orbit in Russia and was copied by the Chinese, and the rest of the communist second world practiced communism. It all started with a revolution in Russia. Okay? And how about the communist takeover in Cuba, in Vietnam, and many other third world countries? These little wars in those third world countries causes globalization to happen because it caused those countries to adapt communism as their form of government. And we all know that communism started in Europe with Karl Marx, but it has spread to the rest of the continents of the world because of these communist wars and communist takeovers. Okay? The aftermath of World War I and World War II established the new world order of having first world, second world, and third world. Okay, those two big wars caused undisputed world powers to rise and divide the world into their own backyards. And then later on we know the story how democracy has prevailed and has been spreading into the rest of the world. And so wars, okay, ushered democracy into the post-Cold War period, like the wars in the Gulf, in Afghanistan. Okay, so wars are causing globalization to happen. The EDSA revolution, okay, it's a revolution. It's bloodless compared to the other revolutions, but it has served as a model that the other that caused the communist countries to follow. And so they had also people power revolutions, and that caused the failure or the collapse of communism in the second world. And that is globalization, when they adopted democracy as their new form of government. Okay, and I mentioned this already, the US-Arab hostilities causing the world to become more democratic. Number 6, driver of globalization is personalities. Okay? People, single individuals who would have some big following, like philosophers, rulers, okay, movie stars, influential people, and they have their own messages and advocacies, ideologies, even fashion trends that they try to spread consciously or unconsciously, and the world follows them. Okay? The world becomes polarized or united in some way because of these personalities. Examples are Karl Marx, the founder of communism. From one man, a lot of wars happened. From one man, a big part of the world followed his system of communism, affected families and economies. Confucius, his messages are very nice, and up to today you can see his quotations spreading in social media. Muhammad, the founder of Islam, and we see a big part of the world following the teachings of Muhammad. And how about Jesus Christ? A lot of the people in the world right now are Christians, and they want all the other peoples of the world to know about Jesus and his teachings. And that's globalization for you, the spreading of Christianity across the world. Rock stars with their fashion statements. Okay, when Justin Bieber would have a certain hairstyle, all the young men in the world would have the same hairstyle. Fantastic! When the Beatles had the mustache and beard and colorful long clothes, the rest of the world also copied the Beatles. Okay? And the movie actors, etc., etc. These are the personalities that have become drivers of globalization. And lastly, world organizations. They are drivers of globalization because they deliberately implement rules and regulations regarding their member countries to follow. And in doing so, they are propagating globalization. The United Nations, okay, and other similar groups, sports governing bodies like FIBA, economic cooperations like the EU, okay, they all contribute to making the nations open to one another. Okay, that is actually collapsing of borders while retaining their sovereignty. They're not really conquering countries. If you're a member of APEC, it doesn't mean that you are surrendering your sovereignty to the other member countries. You still maintain your sovereignty, but you open your doors to other nations, welcome their products, their ideas, and the same way they welcome you as well in their homeland. And that is globalization. When countries create their organizations, okay, their internation organizations, that is globalization. And in times of disaster, we can see these organizations work. Okay, the members of these organizations help one another. If there's a typhoon or an earthquake in a certain country, you see the other countries of the world rushing in to deliver aid, to help. Okay, and that is globalization. It's not like this 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Okay, when an earthquake happens in the Middle East, okay, the other parts of the world do not know yet about that earthquake or the existence probably of some countries, and so that is not yet the time of globalization. But now, because of globalization, countries of the world have organized, okay, and have helped one another in times of need. And these organizations are the drivers, one of the drivers of globalization. Alright? So, as a summary, let's look back at the 7 drivers of globalization that I have showed you today. Can you remember them out of memory? Okay, think about that. 7, there are 7. Begin with science and technology. Alright, so what causes globalization? They are called drivers. And I told you a while ago, science and technology is 1. Trade is number 2. What's number 3? Colonization and Neo-Colonization. Migration, the transfer of people from one place to another to permanently settle there. Wars and revolutions also cause globalization in some way. Okay, because borders are erased in the aftermath of wars. Personalities like rock stars, philosophers, political personalities, okay, they cause globalization. And lastly, world organizations. So these are the 4 or the 7 drivers of globalization. And we have seen them at work throughout the term. Okay? We have seen the stories of political globalization, the story of economic globalization, etc. And we have seen these drivers at work causing globalization to happen. And this wraps up everything. Okay, this lesson wraps up what is the contemporary world. We have seen globalization unfold from the beginning of time to the present. Okay, and in what aspect? political, social, cultural, economic aspects, okay, even agriculture, etc., the globalization of other things. And we have seen the trend, okay, happening. We have seen how politically the world is becoming democratic, okay, that looks like the trend. And then we also have seen in the field of economic globalization that capitalism is the way to go. More and more countries are adopting capitalism, even the former communist countries. Okay? And then culturally, the world is getting Western. And socially, the world is getting online. So remember those four. Okay? The world is getting democratic, the world is getting capitalistic, the world is getting Western culturally, and the world is getting online. Political, economic, cultural, and social globalization. And what drives them? The seven items we talked about today. So this is Sir Jet saying goodbye, thank you, and God bless everyone.